My name is Andrew Vilardo. I'm a C6 quadriplegic. I was injured October 12th, 2003 in a motor vehicle accident. My hobbies include woodworking, wheelchair rugby, and a number of other sports. I got involved in woodworking just from looking around when I was out. Every time I saw something made of wood or built, you just kind of admire the craft. You look at it and say, how can I make that different? How can I make that better? Oh, look how this is put together. Sometimes people think nails are used in woodworking a lot, and it's generally just wood on wood. Being a quadriplegic, I tend to get into dangerous hobbies anyway, so it didn't seem like that big of a deal for me to use power tools or I could chop a limb off, but everything needs modification. All the tools need modification, but it's not a nice table made by a person in a wheelchair. It's just a nice table. My accident happened on a normal fall day in the northeast of Connecticut. I woke up and my mother and grandmother were sitting in the kitchen. They asked me to go grab a loaf of bread at the store. Being that I was a teenager, I said, the loaf of bread at this store is $1 more than the loaf of bread down the street. And on the way there, I was hit and my life was changed forever. I was a volunteer firefighter in my town at the time. As soon as the accident happened, my cell phone started ringing, and the phone call I was getting was from my girlfriend whose mother was in the store I was going to. And she was calling her to see if I was going to the car accident as a fireman to help. And nobody had recognized me because I was in a different car than I had normally driven with a hood over my head. It was like being in a cloud for the first couple months. All I was worried about was getting in a car accident in my father's car, and was surprised to find out that that was the least of his worries. It was difficult in the beginning to picture my life after I left the hospital. While I was still there, I had a doctor coming in telling me they were going to start me on a round of antidepressants, and I really had no interest in taking antidepressants. I felt that I needed to know what everything felt like. The why me's, the pain, the struggle. I needed to be able to cry because I couldn't do something to get the motivation to complete that task later on. Going home, generally you don't have the hustle and bustle of everyday activity like you did in the hospital. And you have to make an effort to explore. Once you're in a wheelchair and you have people coming up to you saying things like, you should get a motorized wheelchair. That's all nice and everything. It's fun to play in one when you're not stuck in one permanently. But, if you could swing it, use a manual chair. When I was first injured, I was told I'd be in a power chair. And I bought a used manual chair. I'd take myself to the mall and get myself stuck as far from the car as I possibly could. So the only way I could get back is to push myself. One of the biggest resources I had for figuring out what it is that I would be able to do was when I started playing wheelchair rugby. My first rugby tournament, we went to dinner after our first day, and I got ridiculed by the guys that have been in chairs 30 years that I had a fork attached to my hand with an adaptive device. And then I looked down at it and I'm like, if I could figure out how to use a remote, how come I can't figure out how to hold a fork with one hand? So that was the last time I ever used it. My three main goals were I wanted to own a home, have a wife, have children, and work full time. Those are the only three goals I set for myself because they seemed unattainable when I was sitting in the hospital. The first time I laid my eyes on my son, it was overwhelmingly amazing. The first time he was placed in my arms, and I looked down at him and I could see half of me and half of my wife in his face. And he opens his eyes and he just looks at you, and you're his entire world. Now, 3 years later, he talks to me and he sounds out words and counts and says it's ABCs and reminds me that I told him 3 weeks ago that I was going to get him a toy. It takes me back to the time where I was little and experiencing new things as if I had just gotten in my car accident. The good thing about children is they're like a sponge. They soak up everything. When he was about 10 months old and discovered clapping, we're eating dinner, and to try to get him to eat baby food, try different things without spitting it out, I would clap. And my left hand I can't close, and my right hand I can't open. And you're looking at him one day and you're wondering why he's slapping his fists together. And you realize that he's copying the slightest movements and every little tiny detail of the thing that you're doing. And then you kind of realize how human they are at that point. It's not just a little ball that poops and pees and cries. He's a human being, and he's looking at you for advice. Everything that you do from that point on, you're his number one role model. When he sees somebody in the mall or somebody at the store who's in a wheelchair, he's not afraid of it. You know, that came real the first time I woke up after sleeping after work, and my chair wasn't next to the bed. And it was in the middle of the room because he had climbed in it while I was sleeping and pushed it, you know, before he could barely walk. He came running down the hallway the minute he realized I was awake and brought it back to me. And I have two more kids, two more boys that are 11 months old, twins, and I get to redo all the stuff that I loved with my first son with them. I look forward to that every day. I know life seems like at this very moment it's over and you're never going to experience things that will bring you as much joy or fulfillment as they did before, but it's actually the complete opposite. Knowing what I know now, the experiences I've had, the people I've met, the things that I've done in my life, don't think I can necessarily do them better as a person who walks. One of the most joyful moments is seeing your son or daughter taking a first step, and it seems like such a pivotal moment because it's like when a butterfly emerges from a cocoon and starts to fly. Everything after that first step that you took was a new experience. Running, jumping, sports, going to school, showering, bathing, eating, cooking, everything. You're standing on your feet. And once you lose something like that, it just seems like nothing is possible at that point on. Once you're able to accomplish one small goal and move on to the next small goal, then the next small goal, it becomes less important of what position your body's in, and you realize you're at a far greater point in your rehab or in your life than you thought you'd ever get to. And you say, oh my God, I came here by myself, wasn't conscious of the fact that it was happening. But you always think back to that first step and you say, I took this step and accomplished this goal. And you realize this step is just a metaphor for moving forward.